You skip the bread at dinner, you carefully portion out your rice, you even pass on the dessert, all just to keep your blood sugar in check.
Right. It takes a lot of mental energy.
It really does. And yet, you wake up and your morning numbers are still climbing. You're left staring at your fasting glucose readings, just like completely baffled.
Which is incredibly frustrating for people.
Oh, totally. But the culprit might not actually be what's on your plate. It might be what's sitting in that innocent, wholesome-looking glass of milk right there on your kitchen counter.
Yeah, that is the hidden variable for so many people.
Exactly. So today's deep dive is pulling from a stack of data. We've got research from Harvard School of Public Health, the University of Sydney, and the American Diabetes Association. And we're looking at this startling biological reality.
The reality that your daily milk habit is secretly causing this massive double sugar load in your bloodstream.
Right, which can spike your blood sugar faster than a candy bar in some cases.
I mean, we've been conditioned for generations to view milk as the ultimate foundational health drink. Strong bones and all that.
Oh, absolutely. The classic health halo.
But for millions of people who are experiencing unexplained fatigue or sudden sugar cravings or those creeping fasting numbers you mentioned, that daily glass is actually acting as a hidden metabolic disruptor.
It's crazy.
It is. But understanding the underlying chemistry of how your body processes this specific liquid, well, it can completely change your metabolic response.
So by the end of this deep dive, you will know exactly which milks to avoid, the ones you should actively reach for. And we're going to share a completely free, simple trick to change how your digestive system handles any drink.
It's a real game changer.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Why is a beverage marketed for decades as the perfect natural fuel secretly behaving like liquid junk food once it gets past our stomachs?
So the answer lies in a metric called the insulin index.
Okay, wait. How is that different from the glycemic index? We hear about the glycemic index all the time.
Right, most people are super familiar with the glycemic index.
Yeah.
That just measures how much a food raises your blood sugar based on its, carbohydrate content.
Right.
But the insulin index measures the actual volume of insulin your pancreas pumps out in response to that food.
Yeah.
And milk possesses this unusually high insulin index that is, frankly, entirely disproportionate to its carb count.
So it's triggering this massive alarm bell.
Exactly. It demands a massive insulin release that you just wouldn't expect by looking at the nutrition label.
I have to challenge that premise, though. I mean, how can my body require this massive flood of insulin if the actual volume of sugar in the milk isn't even that high? Where is the disconnect there?
Well, the disconnect is in the structural biology of lactose itself. Lactose is the primary sugar in standard cow's milk.
Okay.
And lactose is a disaccharide. That just means it's a chemical combination of two smaller, simpler sugars bound together, which are glucose and galactose.
Got it. Two sugars linked up.
Right. Now, when you consume milk, your intestinal enzymes instantly cleave that bond, right away. And the second that bond is severed, both of those sugar molecules enter your bloodstream simultaneously.
Oh, wow. So instead of a slow trickle of one sugar, it's just this synchronized double sugar load.
Exactly. Your pancreas is forced to process two distinct streams of sugar hitting the bloodstream at the exact same millisecond.
That sounds intense.
It is. This synchronized strike is the mechanism driving that intense insulin response. I mean, think about it. If you can handle a complex carbohydrate, like, say, brown rice, perfectly fine, but then you feel super lethargic after a glass of milk, this structural breakdown is the reason.
Because the rice takes time to break down.
Yes, the rice requires extensive unspooling by your digestion. The milk simply cleaves in two and just floods the system.
The sneaky part is how this actually manifests in your daily life. You assume you're just dragging a bit after breakfast, or you find yourself impulsively hunting through the pantry for, a cookie an hour later.
Yeah, the classic mid-morning crash.
And we always blame our lack of willpower. But it's actually the biological fallout of the milk driving that roller coaster.
Because insulin's primary job is to clear glucose from the blood and force it into your cells. So when milk triggers this disproportionately massive insulin flood, the body overcorrects.
It pulls too much sugar out.
Right. Your blood sugar plummets rapidly right after, which leaves your brain starved for quick energy. And that's where the sudden fatigue and those intense cravings for sweets come from.
It makes so much sense.
And if you repeatedly subject yourselves to these massive insulin floods, day after day, year after year, your cells begin to protect themselves. They start downregulating their insulin receptors.
They essentially pull the welcome mats inside and just lock the doors.
That is the literal physical mechanism of insulin resistance.
Right.
So now the pancreas has to pump out even more insulin just to force the same amount of sugar into those resistant cells.
Which is an exhausting cycle.
It really is. In your 20s, your system is resilient enough to absorb that hit.
Yeah.
You just write off the afternoon slump as a busy schedule.
Right, you just power through with the coffee.
Exactly. But by your 30s and 40s, when you stack that with career, stress, poor sleep, and an aging metabolism, well, milk's intense insulin impact becomes a really heavy variable on a body that's already working so hard to keep things steady.
But wait, shouldn't skim milk or lactose-free milk fix this? Because my doctor in the late 90s explicitly told me to switch to skim milk for my health.
Yeah, that is a huge one. Let's dismantle that specific myth using the source data. The conventional wisdom for decades was that less fat equals a healthier cardiovascular profile.
Right. Skim milk was everywhere.
But from a blood sugar perspective, removing the fat content actually removes your body's natural biological speed bump.
Speed bump?
Yeah, dietary fat actively slows gastric emptying, which is the rate at which food moves from your stomach into your small intestine.
Oh, I see. So by stripping the fat out to create skim milk, we've essentially removed the brakes from the car.
We completely remove the brakes. The sugars now just plummet into the small intestine unimpeded. They hit the intestinal walls and cross into your bloodstream at maximum velocity.
Wow.
Which results in an even sharper, more aggressive insulin spike than you would ever experience with whole milk.
That is infuriating. I mean, we've been told for decades to reach for skim milk to be responsible, and we've basically just been drinking a direct sugar injection.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, what about lactose-free milk then? Because if the lactose bond is causing that double sugar load, removing it should neutralize the threat, right?
What's fascinating here is that the manufacturing process for lactose-free milk doesn't actually extract the sugar at all.
Wait, it doesn't? Then what are they doing?
Dairy producers simply add the enzyme lactase directly into the milk vats during processing. So the lactase cleaves the bond between the glucose and galactose, while the milk is literally still sitting in the carton on the supermarket shelf.
Oh my God. It's like pre-demolishing a building before the wrecking ball even arrives. Your digestive system shows up to do the work, and the debris is already spilling into the streets.
That's a perfect analogy, or like pre-chewed food.
Ew, pre-chewed food for your bloodstream. That is a gross visual, but it makes the point. So the sugar rush happens even faster.
Exactly. The total sugar load remains identical, but the initial rise in your blood sugar happens faster because the structural dismantling was outsourced to the factory.
Unbelievable.
The sugars are biologically primed for instantaneous absorption the absolute second they hit your digestive tract.
So the wreckage hits the bloodstream with zero friction. Got it. Now, I know a lot of people listening are mentally retreating to their plant milks right now.
Oh, I bet they are.
Yeah, they're thinking their oat milk habit makes them totally immune to this entire conversation. Are they automatically better?
Automatically, no. Plant milks are absolutely not a default metabolic safe haven.
Because of how they're processed.
Yes. The research data makes it very clear that commercial oat, rice, and almond milks are heavily engineered. They have added starches, emulsifiers, and often cane sugar just to mimic that thick, viscous mouthfeel of animal dairy.
Right, because pure almond water wouldn't taste very good in a latte.
Exactly. A standard glass of flavored or vanilla oat milk can actually contain a glycemic load rivaling a can of soda.
A can of soda?
Yeah. The only word on a plant milk label that provides any real metabolic protection is unsweetened.
Okay, so if strip dairy, pre-cleaved lactose-free milks, and all these engineered plant milks are basically metabolic wrecking balls, what actually passes the test? What should we be pouring into our coffee?
Well, the data from the University of Sydney and Harvard points to a very specific hierarchy of optimal choices. And the apex category here is fermented dairy, specifically unsweetened kefir.
Kefir, okay. What actually changes chemically during the fermentation process?
The introduction of live bacterial cultures fundamentally alters the carbohydrate matrix. The bacteria literally consume the lactose sugars as their own fuel.
Oh, so they're eating the sugar before you do.
Yes, and they produce lactic acid as a byproduct. So this naturally reduces the total sugar content. And furthermore, the observational data strongly correlates the ingestion of these specific probiotics with improved cellular insulin signaling over the long term.
Wait, really? So it's not just a lower spike today, it's actually fixing the system.
Exactly. You are getting a blunted immediate spike and a long-term improvement in your metabolic hardware.
Okay, unsweetened kefir takes the top spot, but let's be real, nobody is pouring thick, tangy kefir into their morning coffee. It just doesn't work. What are the practical alternatives?
Fair enough. High-protein filtered dairy and unsweetened soy milk are excellent practical options.
And why is that? Because of the protein.
Yes, the functional mechanism here is the protein density. High volumes of protein actually trigger the release of specific gut peptides that actively slow down digestion.
Oh, so it acts like the fat we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. You trade that sharp, jagged peak of glucose for a very gentle, rolling hill. High-protein filtered dairy provides all that rich creaminess people desire, but with a fraction of the metabolic consequence.
Which is such an important point because people routinely conflate texture with sugar. Creamy doesn't always mean sugary.
So true.
And what about the plant milk drinkers who don't want soy?
For them, unsweetened almond milk and the thin carton variety unsweetened coconut milk work really well, simply because their baseline carbohydrate load is practically negligible.
They just have a tiny fraction of the carbs of regular milk.
Right. Their minimal carbohydrate footprint makes them exceptionally gentle on a highly sensitive endocrine system. There's actually this fascinating case study in our sources about a woman named Sarah that illustrates this perfectly.
Oh yeah, the Sarah story. She was meticulously tracking her carbs at every meal, right?
Yes, enforcing rigid discipline, eating perfectly all day. Yet her morning fasting glucose numbers were relentlessly creeping upward.
That level of unrewarded discipline is just incredibly demoralizing.
It really is.
Yeah.
So she dug into this, discovered the concept of the insulin index, and she audited her routines. And she identified this deeply ingrained comfort habit.
The milk.
The milk. She was consuming 2 large glasses of standard milk daily, one with breakfast and a big one right before bed.
Classic comfort routine. So what did she do? Did she just cut it out completely?
No, and that's the best part. Rather than adopting an extreme elimination protocol, she just applied a targeted substitution. She swapped her morning glass for a high-protein filtered alternative, and she swapped her evening glass for unsweetened kefir.
Tiny surgical tweaks based on biology rather than sheer willpower.
Exactly. And within 2 weeks, her fasting numbers completely stabilized. She didn't have to abandon her comfort rituals at all. She just upgraded the biochemical software of those rituals.
Which highlights that wellness is about small, sustainable tweaks, not extreme deprivation. Now here's where it gets really interesting. We promised you a free trick that allows you to safely drink the milks you already love.
I love talking about this technique. The clinical term for it is the protein preload method.
Sounds very fancy.
It does, but it's simple. And the data supported by the American Diabetes Association regarding its efficacy is just profound. If you consume a small, concentrated dose of protein or fibrous fat just a few minutes prior to consuming a milky beverage, you alter the entire timeline of your digestion.
Okay, walk us through the actual plumbing here. What is the physical signal that's slowing this down?
Okay, so when amino acids from protein hit your stomach lining, they trigger the immediate release of gut hormones, primarily one called GLP-1.
Okay, GLP-1.
These hormones send a direct chemical signal to the pyloric sphincter, which is the muscular valve connecting your stomach to your small intestine.
Right.
And it instructs that valve to contract and tighten. So by creating this strict bottleneck, the lactose sugars are forced to just trickle into the small intestine milligram by milligram, rather than flooding the absorption sites all at once.
Yeah, you are getting a little too excited about the mechanics of stomach emptying right now.
I know, I can't help it. It is just a brilliant display of human engineering.
But it makes sense. You are literally building a biological dam to control the flow of the river.
Exactly. The sources detail a woman named Jennifer who utilized this beautifully. She outright refused to surrender her morning milky coffee.
Good for her.
Right. So her intervention was brilliantly simple. She just placed a jar of almonds next to her coffee grinder. She ate a small handful of almonds while the coffee brewed.
That's it.
That's it. That minor protein preload initiated the GLP-1 response, tightened her pyloric sphincter, and it completely eradicated her mid-morning energy crashes.
That is such a great hack. The sources also mention Michael, though. Michael's an active guy, and he had high blood sugar from his daily post-workout shakes that he was making with regular milk.
Yeah, Michael's case is really interesting.
But I actually have to push back on his logic here. If Michael just finished an intense lifting session, shouldn't his depleted muscle cells be primed to just vacuum up that glucose instantly without a huge insulin spike? Why were his numbers still elevated?
See, your logic regarding post-exercise glucose uptake is entirely sound. Muscles do want that sugar. but it fails to account for the sheer velocity of liquid sugar.
Oh, because it hits too fast.
Yes. While his muscle cells were indeed primed, a massive bolus of unbuffered liquid lactose hits the bloodstream way faster than even depleted muscles can absorb it. The pancreas senses that rapid accumulation, panics, and releases a disproportionate wave of insulin. So Michael was still suffering from that subsequent overcorrection crash.
So what was
So
his fix? He swapped to unsweetened almond milk, right?
he swapped to a low-carb, unsweetened almond milk base, yes. But critically, he also ate a solid, protein-rich snack before chugging the shake.
He utilized the preload dam.
Exactly. He built the dam, and his afternoon energy dips completely vanished.
Okay, so I can use almonds to create this biological bottleneck, but does the time of day I do this matter, or is my body's machinery essentially static 24/7?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your metabolic machinery is heavily dictated by your circadian rhythms. Our blood sugar tolerance, our peripheral insulin sensitivity peaks in the morning and degrades significantly as evening approaches.
Really? So we're worse at handling sugar at night.
Much worse. As your body prepares for sleep, it begins secreting melatonin. And melatonin actually chemically suppresses insulin secretion from the pancreas.
Wow. So having a heavy glass of milk at like 9 p.m. means you are pouring a massive sugar load into a system that has intentionally powered down its sugar-clearing software.
Exactly. The compounding effect is severe, which is precisely why bedtime milk is a primary driver of elevated fasting glucose the following morning. And we must also factor in
Yeah,
temperature.
the temperature of the milk matters.
Oh, absolutely. Heat increases the kinetic energy of molecules, so a warm, frothy milk beverage will undergo enzymatic breakdown and intestinal absorption much faster than a chilled, dense liquid like cold kefir.
So a warm mug of milk before bed is literally a metabolic double whammy. You are combining your lowest state of daily insulin tolerance with a thermal mechanism that accelerates sugar absorption to maximum speed.
It's the perfect storm for a blood sugar spike.
That is wild. Okay, what about stress? What happens when my baseline is wrecked by a highly stressful work week? Does my stress level change how my body handles my morning latte?
Dramatically. When you are under chronic stress, your adrenal glands pump out cortisol. And cortisol actively, physically interferes with the insulin signaling pathways inside your muscle cells.
How so?
It blocks the translocation of GLUT4 transporters.
Okay, translation please.
Right, sorry. It basically blocks the actual chemical doorways that allow sugar inside the cell, preventing those doorways from ever reaching the cell membrane.
So the doors are just padlocked shut by the stress hormones.
Exactly. So you ingest the exact same glass of milk, but because the cortisol has locked the cellular doors, the glucose and galactose just remain trapped in the bloodstream. The resulting spike is far more aggressive during a stressful week than it would be during a relaxed vacation.
That is terrifying, but honestly also incredibly empowering.
Right.
Because it means you haven't failed your diet. Your environmental context just changed the physical rules of the game for that week.
Precisely. It's not a moral failure, it's just biology.
So how can we implement this starting today, translating all this data into immediate action steps? First, we need to ignore the front of the carton and check the nutritional label for total carbohydrates, right?
Yes. Always check total carbs, because that reveals the hidden starches and sugars masking as thickeners in those plant milks.
Good tip. What else?
You also need to practice metabolic rotation. Don't just rely on one single milk alternative.
Oh, mix it up.
Yeah. Extract the probiotic benefits from kefir on Monday. Get the protein stabilization from soy on Tuesday, and then utilize the minimal glycemic load of almond milk on Wednesday. This variety actually trains your metabolic flexibility.
And obviously, don't stack high-sugar dairy like drinking a flavored milk while eating sweetened yogurt.
Exactly. And finally, maintain a strictly objective awareness log for just 7 days. Document the specific milk, the time of day, and your cognitive energy levels exactly 60 minutes later. The patterns will emerge with undeniable clarity.
So what does this all mean? It means milk isn't some inherent villain, but it is a powerful, hidden variable in our metabolic health. By abandoning the skim, the sweetened, and the artificially pre-cleaved lactose-free milks, and pivoting toward those unsweetened, fermented, or high-protein options, you regain leverage.
You really do.
And if you employ that protein preload method, just using a handful of nuts to trigger your gut hormones and physically slow your digestion, you can completely blunt the insulin response and take back control of your daily energy. It's really about outsmarting the system using your own biology.
It is. And, this raises a final really critical question regarding our daily habits. we analyzed how thermal kinetics impact absorption, how simply heating a liquid accelerates its breakdown and violently sharpens the resulting insulin spike.
Right, the warm milk effect.
Yeah. Well, if simply warming up a liquid can completely change how rapidly it absorbs and spikes our body's insulin, it makes you wonder, what other hot, comforting morning beverages are we consuming on an empty stomach, completely unaware that the temperature itself is turning our daily comfort ritual into a hidden metabolic roller coaster?